Today, we are in week 3 of our series, What If We Believed? The premise of this series is simple, is that what comes to your mind when you think about God is the singularly most important thing about you. It's not your degree. It's not how pretty you are. It's not how not so pretty you are. I'm speaking to myself. It's not how much money you have, how much intellect you have. It is singularly what you think about God. It impacts everything about your life, how you act, how you live, how you pray, how you believe. And if what comes to your mind when you think about God is a God you've created, it doesn't work. It leads to constant issues and errors in the way we act, live, in how we forgive, and how we interact not only with others, but interact within ourselves. But as we pierce through every week the names of God, what we are hoping is that we would have a higher view of who God is that empowers us with a view of who we are and what we are called to do. What do you believe about God? What comes to your mind when you think about God is the singularly most important thing about your life. So today we're going to be looking at Jehovah Nissi, the Lord, our banner. The Lord is our banner. About 2 years into this church plant, I started getting ill. I didn't know at the time I was getting ill. I thought maybe I was tired and stuff. My wife and I went to go see a doctor. I would never forget the day. Here she is right now. I didn't even realize you're here. And now I'm not lying when I tell the story. Doc, good to see you. I want to let you know I'm a little bit better. But hey, doctor, my goodness. And the doctor said, she said, I think you might be burnt out. And I said to her, no, I think I'm fired up. I think I'm fired up. I'm not burnt out, I'm fired up. Then later on, they saw some stuff in my bloods, and I was told that maybe I've got like a internal bleeding. And so for a year, I was going in and out of hospital. It was terrible. What you didn't know is that during that first year of the church plant, my wife and I sold our house. I could not afford to pay for the bond and pay for my kids' education. By the end of that year, we were owing over 60,000 Rand of school fees. We took all our bonus and we paid school fees. I was stressed. I have kids and my wife is Zulu. Like everything, baby, everything that can wipe you out. Stressed out. Sold the house, right? Stayed at a friend's place while we're planning church. And I am struggling to wake up in the mornings. No one knows. I didn't tell anybody. Struggling to wake up. So much so, every morning my wife would wake up the kids, get them ready for school, make sure that they have clothes and their socks don't have holes, take them to schools, come back, and then wake me up so that I can go to work because I was too tired in the mornings to wake up. Sundays, I would drag myself. You know when you set your alarm, but you set like 5 of them and you give them 15-minute intervals. Every Sunday was that. Just waking up, dragging myself to church, shouting at you guys, going back, going to sleep. It was just terrible. Recently, they kind of figured out some things and feeling a lot better. But here's my point. The message I'm going to share with you today. This is what kept me through. To prepare for this for me was different. It can take you 30 hours or so to prepare a message, but I've lived this. How do I, in my weakness, conquer the enemy? How do I, from a place of fatigue and tired, everything hemming in on your soul, how do I, in that place, still have the kind of identity and practices that allow me to press against the woes of the enemy? Jehovah Nissi, the Lord our banner, will help us today, hopefully, to answer that question. Exodus 17, verse 8 to 16 is going to be our main text. And here's what I want to do. I'm going to kind of go to this text and help set a foundation for the name. And then I'm going to spend the majority of time in Ephesians 6, kind of walking through practice. I'm not going to preach to you today. I want to teach you how to engage spiritual warfare. And I want to walk through one-on-one the stuff in Ephesians 6, hoping that the practicality of what you're going to hear today can help you on your Monday. Boardroom, home, work, whatever it is, that you can be one who responds to the identity of Jehovah Nissi by knowing that you are a soldier enrolled for war. I tell you, you will rest from battles, but you'll never rest from war. Exodus 17, 8 to 16. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told them and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur, not the R&B singer, went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever Moses lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar there and called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, Jehovah Nissi, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. This is the word of the Lord. People of Israel have finally come out of Egypt. And they've been navigating the wilderness by dealing with issues that had nothing to do with enemies. It had everything to do with enemies inside the camp. Sometimes you always think like, the problem is out there. It's in my boardroom. Sometimes the issue is just us, with us. How we find ways, creative ways, to complain about things that only God can fix. Moses, give us water. How can I help you? Where am I going to find water, Moses? But you and your God brought us out here. Give us water, Moses. I can't help you. That's literally what happened a few verses before this, until God shows up and he says to Moses, strike the rock. Moses strikes the rock and a whole bunch of water would come out. How many of us in Joburg have been praying for someone to strike the rock, please? Moses does this, and immediately the next verse after that, these people who had been out in the wilderness all these years, the Bible says, then Amalek attacked them. It doesn't give reason. It almost comes across like Amalek attacked them for no reason at all. In fact, that's exactly why God is so adamant to Moses that I want you to tell the next generation, I am going to annihilate and blot out all the Amalekites. Why? Because they attacked you for no reason. They took you for no reason. But watch, the Amalekites begin to attack the Israelites. And this is, guys, the first time Israel goes to war. They've never been to war. They've never trained anybody. They've never given anyone an AK-47 to practice, target, whatever it is. It is bananas. And these guys are coming at them, attacking them. And Moses says to Joshua, you go and fight. So Joshua grabs his sword and takes his folks and they begin to fight. And Moses says, I'm going to go to the top of the hill. Let me tell you, you need people in your life who either fight for you or go to the hill for you. And so he goes to the hill. He goes up with Aaron and Hur. And here's what I find interesting about the story. Moses, throughout his career, let's call it a career, throughout his career as a CEO of the Israelites, has always used the staff only under the command of God. God would say to him, throw it down, turns into a snake. He would say to him, hit the sea here, and the sea would open up. He would say to him, strike the rock, water would come out. For the very first time, while they are in war for the very first time, God says absolutely nothing to Moses. So tell me how Moses comes to the conclusion to do what he did. Because here's how I think it happened. Moses went up to the hill with Aaron and Hur, and he thought to himself, I got the staff of God. I have seen God do things when I've done this with the staff. Brother man puts it out, puts it in front of him, and he's watching. Realizes, wait, man, this ain't doing nothing. He goes, all right, cool. Let me try something. He maybe puts it out to the side like this. Losing. He probably did one of those, nothing is going down. Sorry for you had to experience it behind me. And ultimately what happens to Moses is what happens to all of us. Eventually we come to the end of our efforts and take the posture of surrender. Moses lifts up his hands because he's figured out, I'm trying to do what I did at the sea. I'm trying to do what I did at the rock. Nothing is working. Lord, what's going on? Lifts up his hands. While his hands are lifted, all of a sudden, he goes, wait, tengatia wina. And in his mind, he thinks, I finally found the position, and he lifts it up. I've done it. And then here's what I think happened. He goes, all right, at least I found the thing. And normally when I do it, I just put it down and God does his thing. So I lifted up my hands. God is activated. Now let me relax and watch the Lord win. He puts his hands down and they start losing again. He tried it again. This time he lifts up slowly, I'm willing to bet you. Lifts it down again. Lifts up slowly. Lifts it down until he realizes warfare is about fighting to stay in a place of surrender. Watch me today. What spiritual warfare comes down to is not how mighty you are in front of the enemy. It's realizing that what allows the might of God to break out in you is surrender. Lifts up his hands and he begins to keep his hands up and he's watching victory break out all over. All of a sudden, Joshua is killing these guys, annihilating these guys. These guys have never been to war. He gets tired a little bit. And Aaron and Hur can see now, but oh no, it's a whole hand up thing that's working. Lifts up his hands. He's getting tired. Aaron and Hur take a stone and they put it under him. And then they begin to lift up his hands so that he might remain in the posture of surrender. So let me show you what victory looks like. Because we have an idea that when we come against the enemy, it's about brute force. It's about coming with our fists. But here's how victory looks like. Can I borrow 2 men? Do you mind if I borrow the 2 of you? All right. So watch. Here's how winning looks like, supposedly in the kingdom. You ready? Okay. You good with this? You good with this? Right? So thank you so much. Watch. Clearly that sometimes the reasons we lose is not because God is not powerful. It's just that we're tired. You're tired. You're weary. And you can't win spiritual battles alone. The principle in Exodus 17 is that to win, you need to be under a rock, surrender, and have friends. You want to win? That's how you win. Isn't it interesting that later on in Golgotha, there would be another one whose hands are lifted, forced onto a cross, nailed to a cross. And that would be the posture that the Romans and the Jewish people would think they've lost, but it was a posture of victory. You want to win? Surrender. You want to win the game? You want to outlive, outlast, out-obey. Surrender. Moses figures this out and the people begin to win. And so Moses' response is, Jehovah Nissi. Now, why? Why? This is key. Why would he say this? Now, if you watch some of those movies, maybe Braveheart and all those movies, and whenever these guys are going out to war, what is the one thing that is in front of all armies? Anyone remember? It's a flag, right? So in the medieval times, the flag would literally be the flag of a nation. Right? And so you would take your flag, and literally the pole that kept the flag is what you would call a standard. That's why they had to lift up a standard against their enemies. You have to take the standard and you put it in front. Now, if your armies were great, there were subdivisions that had different flags, but all of them were submitted to the one flag. And the moment that flag gets taken by the enemy, it doesn't matter how many people you have in your squad, you run. Because the idea in the early times of ancient Near East is that the flag didn't have a picture of a nation. It had the picture of a God. The banner was a banner of your God. And so the idea was, we are going to go to war, but the way we're going to win is because this banner is greater than your banner. My God is greater than your God. And so as much as we're going to attack you, the battle is first going to take place between the banners. And then the rest of us will be the resultant of what happened up there. So the Amalekites come to the Israelites with a banner in the image of their God. The Israelites have never been to war. They don't have a standard. They don't have a banner. And now in victory, what Moses realizes, oh my, the Lord is our banner. Jehovah Nissi. That this God who seems invisible to their eye and mine, he is present over us like a banner would be present for my enemies. And he conquers them. That's why we won. You see, if you don't understand this, you'll take credit for battles you didn't win. Your only role was to just show up with the sword and make sure you don't die. Let me tell you, that is exactly what parenting feels like. It's like you're just showing up every day like, how do I not die today? Let me tell you, when we realize the role of God in our battles, we trust better and we fight better. Some of you, you're losing not because the cause you're fighting for is not right. You're just losing because you're fighting wrong. Jehovah Nissi, he's our banner. He's our standard. He's the one who conquers the enemy. Ours is to respond as enrolled soldiers who are not concerned, Thessalonians tells us, Timothy, of civilian affairs. But our job is to please the commander. That's what it is. So here's what I realized. In the story of Exodus 17, there are 3 core functions to win warfare: love, faith, and hope. Love. You need people around you. You cannot do it alone. Faith. You need to have a trust in God in the midst of the current battle. Whether the battle started because they just wanted to you need to have the kind of faith that says, Lord, I am trusting you in this battle. But watch, not only do you need to have faith, you must have the kind of hope that if I keep raising my hands, he will keep conquering. Now, I want us to go to Ephesians 6, and I want to walk through one by one what Ephesians 6 calls the armor of God. Ephesians 6, 10 to 19 says this. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the scamata. Literally, So in other words, the enemy is not just trying to take you out. He has schemes. That's why it's always confusing for me when we think that somehow spiritual warfare is something out there for them, not for us, when the enemy is tailor-making temptation just for you. Let me tell you, if I have to fall, it won't be because of money. It won't be because of power. It will be because of a girl. Why? Because the enemy knows me, knows my stuff. And so it doesn't matter to me how much you're my homegirl, how much you and I have been friends. The moment we meet, someone other than the two of us knows we're meeting, and I'm going to keep this door open. I don't care what you want to talk about. I am not going to close the door for you and I to have a private moment. Now, I want you to recognize, let me break down Zulu women for you. Let's take a moment to pause from the sermon. I want you to recognize when I said if there's one thing that will take me out, it's girls. She was so quiet. She was like, hey, boy, then I said, I will not close it. She's like, yeah. Now, hear me, schemes. Here's what I've learned about the enemy. He will attack you when you are disappointed, visit you when you are successful. Hear me today. You understand? Like, what the enemy loves to do is attack you in the moment of vulnerability. When you feel low, you feel tired, you feel weary, you're disappointed with work, disappointed in life, disappointed in marriage, disappointed with your purpose in life. He attacks you. But when you're successful, he visits you because he knows there's something about success that ultimately ends up making us attack ourselves if we're given the opportunity. Why? Because somehow when we win, we stop realizing how we won, baby. I didn't win because of sheer effort. I won because the banner went ahead of me and it multiplied my impact with my sword. Visits you in that promotion, visits you in that moment of transition, visits you in that new home, visits you in that new car, whatever it is. But the moment you're weak, moment you're disappointed, the enemy never fights fair. 4, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Read this in a way you can grasp. We do not wrestle against our bosses. We do not wrestle against our wives, husbands. We do not wrestle against our friends, our foes, our enemies, our exes. We do not wrestle against baby mama, baby daddy, baby father, baby mother's daddy. What do we wrestle against? Watch. This is the extent that your destiny threatens the enemy. What he's going to send to you is not people. It's rulers, authorities, cosmic powers. Over this present darkness against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up your responsibility. Take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand firm. Okay, here's a guarantee. The evil day is coming. And sometimes when the evil day comes, we don't always win, but we can stand. Oh, you know this is true. You ever had battles where you know, I don't think I won this one, but I just didn't quit. They're just some battles where the way out of this is to just not quit. I'm just going to stay. I'm going to keep reading this word. I'm still pray. I'm going to still come into community. I'm going to find ways to stay in the game. Stand. Therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace in all circumstances, taking up a shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take on the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. Lastly, to that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints and also for me, that words may be given to me in the opening of my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel, right? We're going to walk through each one of these armor pieces so we can understand how we engage warfare. Now, as a setup, here's what Paul's saying. He's contrasting two types of fighting. He says there's a wrestler and then there's a soldier. He says that the wrestler comes to do fighting one-on-one. And they're using their brute force to try and wrestle their enemy down. In fact, in those days, wrestlers used to put a little bit of oil on their body so that the enemy might be slippery on them. So they can be able to outwork the enemy, out-scheme the enemy just with a little oil. And here's what Paul's saying. To fight alone using brute strength with a little bit of anointing will not going to work. The enemy will take you out. That's not how you fight the enemy. Glad you're anointed. Glad you're strong. But you can't fight alone. Then he says the only way to win these kind of battles is that you actually need to be a soldier, the Roman soldier. Now, if you don't know, Roman Empire killed folk. And they did it well and they liked it. And they did it for such a long time that when you track the history of the Roman Empire, they hardly lost battles. They lost a couple, but they hardly lost battles. How did they do it? When Paul then is mentioning that you must fight like a Roman soldier, everyone would have propped it up wondering, how are you going to translate this into a spiritual dynamic? Because the Roman soldiers hardly ever lost. Do you know how they never lost? The Roman soldiers never fought as strangers. They fought as family. Number one key. Okay, so much so that when the Roman Empire would colonize a particular colony, they would take it and they would take the men from there and not split them into their army in different places. They would actually leave the men in their colony, but force the men to live with each other for 10 to 20 years. And then make them fight together. Why? Because Romans knew that the way we're going to beat the enemy is if we are trying to make sure that my friend doesn't die. Some of the reasons the church keeps losing is that you just fight for yourself. One of the reasons why we supposedly claim that we keep failing. We are good at fighting for self. Terrible at fighting for each other. The concept of spiritual warfare has to be founded in love, has to be founded in fighting with the people that are my family. Fighting for them. That the way I'm going to win this battle is making sure no one kills my brother. I'm not asking you to be in connect groups because of a stat. I don't care about that. I'm asking you to be in a connect group because you can't do this by yourself. And watch, their understanding was eventually time spent together creates the kind of love that we're willing to die for each other. So this idea that I must rock up in a group and all the lights must go on immediately. Sometimes the lights will go on after a year, but the whole point is I stayed with you. That's how they won. They won as family, not as strangers. So here's how the family then had to put together the armor. Put on the belt of truth. The belt of truth. Now, how many of you ever watched those Roman movies where, there's some parts of the armor that are loose, some parts of the armor that are like strong, like the breastplate, whatever it is. And now in order to put on the belt, which basically held everything together, literally held everything together. Many times you could not put the belt on by yourself. Because too many things would drop, too many things would be loose. In order for it to be done properly, someone would have to put the belt on you. Hear me today. You need someone in your life to tell you the truth. If you want to win, someone must put it on you. can't put it on yourself. That's why I am not a fan of self-defined truth. Dangerous. Dangerous. But what you need is the kind of environment where you have, begged people, tell me the truth about me. Speak to me. Let this word just speak into my heart. Don't allow who I am to diminish who I can be. Speak to me. Here's what the Bible says. We're going to the next slide. Jeremiah tells us that the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Guess whose heart he's talking about? Yours and mine. So the heart that thinks it's fine is the heart that should be worried it's not fine. Here's what he's saying. Who can understand it? This heart is just deceitful. In other words, I can be reading my Bible. I can be in prayer meetings. I can be in church, and yet my heart can trick me. But I need the kind of people in my life who, when my heart tricks me, knowing all the word that I know, can say to me, no, you're wrong now. You're wrong. And I love the fact that we think we need to agree in order to obey. Where on earth do you get that idea from? Where on earth do you get the idea that agreement and understanding precedes obedience? Where on earth do you get it? Because at the end of the day, if I understand and don't do, I get killed anyway. And if I don't understand and don't do, I'm killed anyway. It's not your understanding that saves you. It's your doing. Your doing. I'm glad you don't agree. Obey. Do it. It will save your life. And if you don't believe me, watch the track record of those who didn't do this. History is filled with examples that we are conveniently choosing to turn a blind eye to. Good word, Siv. How you doing? You're doing well. Keep going. Keep going, player. Watch. Jeremiah says one thing. The next slide tells us, this is David. He says, let a righteous man strike me. That is kindness. Let him rebuke me. That is oil to my head. Right? So let somebody who's righteous. I love the fact that it's not using nice words. It doesn't say, let him politely just correct me. No, that what this feels like at times is a striking, a rebuking. Literally, the Hebrew word for rebuke is to strangle something. That sometimes the engagement of my soul feels like my friend is strangling me. But what I'm holding on to, is that they're righteous. They're righteous. Them being righteous doesn't make them right, but them being righteous helps me. Sometimes they're wrong. That's fine. I would rather fall and fail on a righteous man's bad advice than an unrighteous man's good advice. I'm going to figure out how you can help me do this. Now, I am great at finding a word for you, but I am terrible at finding a word for myself. I need people in my life. As much as I can learn right now, I can read all kinds of books from all kinds of different sources, and I can learn. It doesn't matter whether they saved, I can learn from all of them. But watch, there is something that happens when I actually invite people, righteous people, into my life and say, you speak to me no matter what. You speak that word in my life. You touch on my parenting, touch on my marriage. And here's what you're going to find when you begin to do that. Next slide is this. Galatians says, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? Now, some of you have made enemies because of the way you tell the truth. Now, pop. Too harsh, too unnecessary. You think your harshness is going to convict the soul. It's not the harshness that convicts it. It's the truth. I don't have to shout it at you if it's true. I just have to tell you, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. Don't do it. And if you decide to do it, I've said that to a few of my friends, that don't do this. But if you do it and you get in trouble, call me. How are we doing? We okay? All right. The next one is my favorite one, the breastplate of righteousness. This is so key. There are two layers to your breastplate. Ever seen that sometimes in war, the enemy might throw maybe a sword or an arrow, whatever it is, and it will pierce through the first level. But sometimes there's a pad underneath the first level that helps. So depending on from how far they've gone, you can pierce through the first level, but when it hits the pad, it lessens the blow. Our breastplate of righteousness is made up of two kinds of righteousness. First one is progressive righteousness, which is sanctification. Sanctification is when we are walking through life, reading the word, praying, loving on people, forgiving people. You know those kind of days when you felt like, man, this was a great day for God and the kingdom. I just obeyed every time. Sanctification. I just be working that thing the whole time, right? Now, the second, the deeper layer is one of justification, which is imputed righteousness. Let me explain how this works. There are times in your life where the enemy will hit you and you have that bad day. You do that bad thing. You say that wrong thing. And the enemy comes in to go, you see, I told you you weren't a Christian. I told you you've been faking this the whole time. And soon everybody will know in that circle because they can see you. And here's what you go. You go, you know what? That is true. I have failed, but because of imputed righteousness, I might have failed in my sanctification, but Christ has not failed in his righteousness. You see, what ultimately is the ultimate breastplate defense is what Christ has done for me. I might fail in what I do for him, but he cannot fail in what he does for me. On my worst day, I'm the righteousness of God. On my best day, I'm the righteousness of God. And when I fail, I'm still the righteousness of God. Here's what it says, Corinthians. It says, God made him who had no sin to be sin for us so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Also, in Hebrews, it tells us this. It says, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have this confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood. Watch. Most of us have confidence to enter the holy place by our works. I read the Bible today. I went to church today. You know what I mean? And so now during the day, I feel like I can pray to God. But yesterday, when I did that thing and I said that thing, man, it made it hard for me to come to God. But hold on now. It's his blood that gets you in. Not your sweat and tears, not your efforts. It's his blood. And not only that, we are told in verse 21 that we have this great high priest. We have a Moses on the top of the hill, constantly interceding for us. So where then does this confidence come from? Not our works, but his works. So when the enemy hits me and I fail in sanctification, pierces through, but what protects my heart is knowing that I'm justified. Last week, Friday, my wife and I got into, it's not a fight, but let's just say it wasn't great. Don't know where she is, but let's go for it. And also I need to change these stories because I feel like I need to tell, there must be some Sundays where I said, guys, yesterday, it was great at home. My wife was amazing, so just assume she's amazing all the other times, except for the times that I tell you, oh, here she is. Okay. Friday it happened. And here's what I said to her. I said, all right, listen, I have work all day on Saturday, work all day on Sunday. I don't have capacity to talk to you about this thing, so we'll chat maybe after that. Now, that created a problem. And it created a problem because she did not respond to your boy. So fair enough. It happened. Saturday, we have a meeting. Oh, got all these volunteers here. I went to one or two of my friends. I said, here's what happened to my wife. And they said, well, when are you going to talk to her? I said, I don't know, but I need you to keep me accountable to talk to her. They said, sharp. And so Saturday evening, I get a text. Did you talk to her? I said, no, homie. I mean, like the day was long and stuff. Sunday came, I was preaching in Pretoria, came back. Then I was here in the evening service. And right in the evening service, one of my friends says, hey, homie, did you speak to her wife? I said, brother, I was doing the Lord's work the whole day. I didn't have time to be. Monday came. He sent me a text. I blue ticked him the whole day. I decided I needed a Monday just, watch a series or two, just connect with the Lord and creatively. Tuesday, I was like, you know what? If I don't do this, Holy Spirit himself is going to touch your boy. So we in the car and you know how these things always start? Someone has to break the ice. We're in the car and just like, hey, you want to talk about what happened on Friday? Talked about it. Kind of was okay. Talked about it again. Eventually kind of figured it out. But here's my point. I need someone. There is nothing more dangerous for you than a pastor who hides behind the pulpit. I don't live behind this. When I'm done preaching for you, I'm going to go figure out how to get electricity for my family. And there will be no pulpit. My wife will get to tell me, why do you keep telling people stories about us? My kids will be running around trying to be fed, and I'm going to have to go figure that out. I don't live behind a pulpit. Neither do you live behind your boardroom. Neither do you live behind your money. Neither do you live behind your success. Find a way to get people in so they can tell you the truth and they can help you remember you're justified when you failed. Breastplate of righteousness. What's the next one? It's the sandals of the gospel. Very quick on this one, I want to let you know is this. How you do your Christian life, the footing in your Christian life is fundamentally dependent on your understanding of the gospel. Do you think you've earned salvation, or do you think it's been given to you? Do you think God forgives your sins, or do you think that there's sins that you've done that he can't forgive because you are super special and that this blood can't work for you? Do you understand this gospel of God becoming man, fully God, fully man, living the life we should have lived, dying the death we deserved to die, and on the third day being lifted up and raised, that anyone who believes in him actually has new life? Do you believe that in the temptation that has annihilated you for years, that now you actually have a new heart, born again, that you actually have the ability to choose something different because of the power of the gospel? How you believe the gospel will set your footing in life. Next one is the shield of faith. The shield of faith was both offensive and defensive. The way that they would grab a hold of the shield of faith allowed them that in close contact with the enemy, that they can actually hit the enemy, push the enemy off. But what the shield of faith does, the Bible tells us that it extinguishes the flaming darts of the enemy. Okay. So in other words, there is no idea in the world that doesn't carry intent. When the enemy hits you, there is an intent he wants to place in you. The idea that there's innocent ideas in the world is a fallacy. There are no innocent ideas. There's ideas with intent. Every idea wants to shape you and is shaping you, molding you, shaping how you interact. And so what fundamentally is happening is that faith does not shield you from temptation. It shields you from temptation burning you. It shields you from an intent planting a seed in you. The ability for you to look at a scenario where you can choose corruption and choose something else is when you activate faith that says, what I could receive from the hand under the table might be great, but by faith I believe that God will give me what is right for me. What I could do with this guy or gal in the name of pleasure and love might feel good in the moment. But when I think through, I have faith that God, the right time, the right person for me. faith. It extinguishes the fire that comes with temptation, with the arrow. There are times when I just don't have enough faith and I need friends around me. Do you ever watch those movies when the Romans are moving against an enemy and they like a square, they all cover each other like this, right? There are times when my faith is weak and running low. And the only way out of this scenario is a friend bringing their faith and covering me. This is why when you meet with somebody in their trauma without faith, you're vulnerable. You ever felt that? You're out there talking, so they're sharing stuff with you. The reason why you're taking secondary offense, you didn't come with faith. The reason why it's wearing you out, you didn't come. You have to approach their fight with your faith so that when the arrow is coming for them, you can be able to not just protect them, but protect yourself so that this doesn't touch you. Shield of faith, so critical, so important to our lives. Next one, helmet of salvation. In Paul, he has a picture in 1 Thessalonians of what the helmet is. Here's what he says. He says, but since we belong to the day, we belong to the light, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate, the armor, actually, translation, of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of our salvation. There are some battles that we have that we struggle to see the fruition of them soon. We've been trusting the Lord for a house. It's been 4 years of praying regularly. 4 years, finally got answered. You understand? 4 years. I got my kids to pray. My kids been praying. Everybody in the house been praying, putting it up there. 4 years, over and over and over again. Trusting for my relationship with my dad for years, over and over and over again, right? And sometimes you've been trusting for such a long time that like Moses, you get weary of keeping your hands up. And the only way to stay in the game is by sitting on the solid rock of eternal hope. I might not be healed on this side of heaven, but I will eventually be healed. Because there is, for us who believe, a reality of a new Jerusalem, a new earth that will come, that we must have hope. I totally understand how we have found it unhelpful for those who've been caught up in civil rights and in apartheid to keep singing songs about heaven. And part of our dynamic was the heaven reality stopped them from fighting in the now. But no, I actually think the heaven reality allowed them to know that as much as they're fighting in the now and it seems like it's not going to change, there is a place where it has to change. And so in order to stay sane, I have an eternal hope that in the middle of battles, I can say, Lord, I'm struggling with faith for the now, but I'm holding on to eternal hope for what you will do. Because this is who you are. This is what you said you will do. I'm telling you, that is so critical to your faith and warring against the enemy. Let me say this before I get into the sword of the Spirit. The reason why faith and hope are so important is this. When the fiery darts hits us, the idea of the fire is that it will, if it hits you without faith, it will burn your consciousness. And there's something about your conscience being burnt, being seared, that when you do the wrong thing, you won't be able to know if it's wrong because you've seared your conscience. You've seared it. And so you must, with faith and hope, keep your conscience innocent and soft like a baby's bottom, just soft like that. I've had 3 kids. I've held them. And I mean, a baby's bottom, man, is just, it doesn't even matter if you don't have Johnson & Johnson. It's soft land. And there's something about the consciousness that is soft. right? That is innocent, that doesn't just allow you to do the right thing, but it actually allows you to do the hard thing that God is calling you to. Some marriage are not working, not because you're not doing the right thing. It's because you just failed to do the hard thing. The hard thing, the thing that moves her, the thing that moves him. Some of your friendship, that's the same dynamic. It's having the kind of consciousness that is alert to need and desire and attention. Can I take a pause from the sermon and tell you a story? So I told you I got sick and stuff. They eventually found out that my testosterone is shot completely. So and other things. So I'm on pills every day, but also I get monthly shots, testosterone. I was there on Friday. I got a shot. Now, when I got there, you ever been to those places where you go and you see somebody who's meant to give you a service, and when you arrive, it looks like you've bothered their day? Now, whenever I go to this place, that's the feeling I get every time. Almost feel like I have to, sorry for needing an injection. Right? But this time they had a new lady there, new. She came to me before I even walked in, gave me like a thing, said, hey, fill this out so that your whole process goes smooth. I'm like, what? Okay, cool. I walk in, she's smiling at me. So I'm like, should I smile? So it's a whole experience. And then she says, what are you here for? I'm like, no, I'm here for an injection. I'm like, okay, cool. So she gets the injection ready. I go and stand and assume the position. Sorry, I go and assume the position. She's Zulu, and here's what she said to me. She said, okay, kupuka. Now, I'm Xhosa. So I thought she meant, yo, kulula. So I'm like, sure thing, I don't mind. So, zoom, I put it here now. I put the thing here. Then she goes, kupuka. I'm like, sure, zoom. Now, I'm trying to keep the frontal legit. Because now the more I'm kupuking, this whole situation, right? Then she says, no, I'm telling you to lift it up. I'm like, what do you mean? You were saying I must kupuka, so I've done it. And then someone knocks at the door to come in, and she's freaking out. No. I said, listen, lady, I have 3 kids, been married for 17 years. I don't care who sees my bum. You put that injection on your boy, because it doesn't matter. So many people have seen this bum. All I want you, this doctor here, no, this doctor, let me tell you now, this doctor here, yes, I got no time to be worrying what you think about my Nangu doctor front row. Listen, it doesn't matter if your conscience is exposed as long as you protect it from the enemy. It doesn't matter how vulnerable you feel. If there's anything you must protect in your life, is your ability to hear God and obey. When you kill that, you kill so many things. Sword of the Spirit, the Word of God, one of my favorites. I learned this during that season where I just couldn't do things. Here's what I learned, is that when the enemy attacks me, it's not just faith that allows my heart to be protected, but I must counterpunch with the sword. The sword for the Romans was actually a short thing. You had to literally be in close contact and stab somebody with it. And here's what we are doing with the word. We are in faith protecting our souls, but counterpunching with the word. And so what I need to do when the enemy touches me is touch him back. Because what I want to teach the enemy, every time you touch me or anyone close to me, I will touch you. How do I do this? By declaring the word, not just against him, but over situations. There is nothing that angers the enemy like you choosing to be selfless and praying for other people. And so if I'm being hit financially, I begin to pray financially for breakthrough for people I know who need it. Why? Because I'm countering. I begin to speak the word, not over my life only, but I'm speaking the word over their life in their situation because I'm teaching him something. Speak the word. See, the sword of the Spirit here, this is not the word read. It's not the word listened to. It's not the word thought. It's the word spoken. Speak the word. Speak the word. Walk into your children's room. Walk into your boardroom. Speak the word. Speak the word. Because this anointed word will do for you what you can't do for yourself. Lastly, praying in the Spirit. This is beyond just praying in tongues, by the way. If you read the scripture, it tells us that we must pray in all kinds of prayer, all kinds of supplication, not just for ourselves, but for others. Pray for the saints as well. So key that we're actually taking time to deliberately bring the lives of people into our mind and intercede. Let me tell you when we're not doing this right. When you have to wait for your friend to have a need in order to pray, you're behind. Because we understand that we are constantly in war, and the only way we can win is by fighting for each other against the enemy. And so you need to have a list of people in your life, 2, 3, 4, that you have made it a practice that I pray for them regularly. And I'm not just speaking, I'm watching. Because as I'm praying, what I'm watching for is, Lord, is there anything you want to tell me about their life? I'm praying while I'm watching. That's why they used to have the watchmen who used to stand in the tower, and they would watch to see, are the enemies coming? So that they might alert everybody. That's what you're doing over someone's life. You're watching over them. I'm going to say this and then I'm done. Do you know that everything we spoke about today, every single one of the elements of the armor of God, is stuff you learn in foundations here? Prayer, hope, faith, the word. In other words, it is the foundational things that allow us to conquer. I think sometimes we want to make this more complicated than God intends it to be. It's the foundational things. How we win is not the fancy stuff. You ever watch those videos? All these powerful men of God keep telling you. Now, you see, if you just give 100, if you just do this, no. It's what you do every day that allows you. Because here is the principle of warfare. You cannot war in what you haven't walked in. David knew this. He's like, I see Saul's armor is better and bigger, but I can't war in what I haven't walked in. And so what you walk in on a regular, when crisis comes, if every day you have become a master anxious folk, when crisis comes, you will respond with anxiety. When every day you are finding ways in your rhythm to watch that and listen to that. When crisis comes, boys to men will be the thing that's helping you in the battle now. But when you're in the word, in prayer, in community, in hope, practicing faith, when crisis comes, you do what you walk in on the daily. The enemy is so vulnerable that he doesn't need angels to take him out. He just needs your obedience. That's the extent of which God has given you authority. If you obey, we win. Not you win, we win. We might feel like we're in seasons where the battle is heavy, but at the end of the day, how we win is doing the simple things